as key Nance nuclear facility hit by a sabotage. And of course, Iran is vowing to enrich uranium up to 60%. 90% is all you need for making a nuclear weapon. But Iran doesn't really have to enrich uranium that high because they already have nuclear weapons. Well, it just so happens that we find out exactly what happens, not because of this article that cites Israeli public media, however, an intelligence source who said it was the result of an Israeli cyber attack that caused this, whatever that was going on with the facility. But I found out today from Israeli journalists there that I know over in Israel that said that there was a cable, a very unique cable that was delivered to the facility, and the Iranians never really bothered to inspect the cable closely. The cable actually has very interesting cavities that have been built into it, and of course it was loaded with explosives in this cable. So well hidden and so well sealed that the Iranian people there at the nuclear facility didn't take the time to inspect it, never realized that this cable was a flippin' bomb. And of course, what happens is once they get it in there, of course, months go by, and then Israel is able to detonate this cable remotely. So, yeah, it was a sort of Israeli cyber attack, but as a result, ended up blowing up inside the facility. So, very big embarrassment for Iran. Iran's not really saying exactly what happens there. But it says it's going, as they said here in the article on Yahoo News, it's going to enrich uranium at its highest level ever after this was happening there, and up to 60%, as I was telling you already there. So interesting to see, and also interesting to find out what really did happen there. Also, I'm finding out, too, that another Israeli-owned vessel has been hit by Iran over in the Persian Gulf. After about a 48-hour following that ship there. Of course, Israel always wanted to retaliate on any of these things that are happening like this, but the vessel is not carrying an Iran flag. So it's kind of awkward to say that Iran is targeting Israeli interests if Iran doesn't really know who owns the ship, which I kind of find interesting in the first place. Also, Biden is also going ahead to do the United Arab Emirates, the deal of the F-35s. He is allowing them to purchase these planes. Very, very lucrative deal for the American arms industry. $23.37 million in acquisition packages included from this deal there. This was something that Trump had actually brought in, but the Biden administration put a halt to it until they reviewed the plan. So I thought that was kind of interesting to note that. And then it comes another issue that I wanted to share with you. Remember, just the other day we were talking about how that the Chinese and Iranians are planning a cyber-type attack in the very near future on the U.S. banking system. Now, I was in a very interesting meeting a little while back. A man that had met me that was talking about global economic collapse. And he said that Egypt would be the precursor to this global economic collapse. You'll see Egypt collapse first. And oddly enough, I get a message from a friend of mine up in D.C., and he says to me that you're not going to believe this, Steve, but there is already an initiative underway to collapse Egypt economically. And of course, he was saying to me that he may very well see the Iranian-Chinese attack on, a cyber attack on U.S. banking institutions that has been planned for some 10 years by China. Iran joined that battle to attack the U.S. banking system about 2 years ago. And but of course, my big question though is what then is causing the collapse of Egypt economically? So I reached out to a friend of mine about that to see if I could find out, different friend altogether, about this economic collapse. And he sent this to me, so I figured I'd share this with you guys as well. I thought it was kind of interesting. He gave a speculation on what he thinks is a plausible cause for the potential developing catalyst and variables surrounding Egypt's impending collapse. And it does seem very viable what he says. He says it is possible that Russia may have been involved a party leading up to the Suez Canal incident that developed on March 23rd, 2021, given the presence of at least 2 Russian warships within proximity of the Evergreen prior to its collision with the sidewall of the canal. It's probable that Russian naval forces may have conducted maritime operations to sabotage the rudder of the ship's vessel, which was later found to be the primary factor of the ship's inoperability. The primary motives behind the impending collapse of Egypt's economy and possible political regime transitions are driven by China's incentive to acquire control of the Suez Canal, which would ultimately give them the ability to regulate traffic flow of vessels and frequently utilize the canal for global trade, thus positioning themselves to hold political leverage over the competing Western economies. Now, he points out, Suez Canal, China's incentive is to indirectly push Egypt into default on the development of loans issued to them in an attempt to acquire the Suez Canal to further their political and economic interests. It is representative of similar financing deals seen in numerous other countries across Africa, South Africa, America, etc. China is currently Egypt's largest trade